Hey, good morning. Riddle here, reporting from the Santa Cruz Mountains. While everyone else was getting stuffed and getting drunk on 4th of July, happy 4th of July, by the way, I was working away on a project that I've been procrastinating about for a while now. So let me take you into the greenhouse and show you what we're doing, because I don't think I've covered this one before. So let's go. So this was my makeshift greenhouse. I actually have a greenhouse that was a birthday present for me last year, but I haven't had the time to put it together. But this was just the carport, and I got some really nice 6 to 9 mil plastic and pulled it over it. Plastic was a little under $200 delivered, but that's still a pretty cheap greenhouse. And it works in the winter time just to keep things from freezing. So my exotic stuff that can't go below a certain temperature, I keep in here. And it's also really good to do seedlings and cuttings. So this is the new project. And these are cuttings. What I've done, you want to get a good rooting compound, first of all. Doesn't matter what brand, they're all pretty much the same thing and mostly inert ingredients. I also use hydrogen peroxide. Can be from the dollar store, doesn't matter. The thing about taking cuttings is, in general, you don't want to use regular potting soil or yucky, this regular soil, because it's going to have more bacteria in it. It's going to be more prone to maybe holding too much moisture or not enough moisture. So you're going to get this seed starting mix. Worked excellent. I mixed that with, now the thing about this is you don't need the food, but the reason I like this is it was on sale, and it's basically just pure peat moss with some food in it, with some nitrogen, slow release nitrogen, and then you want vermiculite. The real gem is just to mix a good amount of vermiculite with a good amount of sphagnum peat moss or peat moss, and you get this really nice light fluffy soil, and it keeps it from getting too wet or too dry. And you want to pre-moisten it a little bit before you cram it into your pots. And I water it actually with a diluted amount of hydrogen peroxide. So imagine like 2 or 3 tablespoons of peroxide per cup of water. And that's what I'll moisten this with, because the goal is for me to get the bacteria level down, and this will also help to oxygenate the soil. And the other thing that's good about using this for seedlings and cuttings is that the peat moss, because of the acidity, also helps to manage some of that bacteria growth and what have you, from what I understand. So then you're going to wash out your containers really well. White vinegar is really good to clean them up with, to get the bacteria level down, molds and what have you. And then you're going to take your dirt and you're going to fill it into your container pretty compressed. You want to compress it really, really well. And one of the tricks that I do is I take an empty bottle. This was empty because I used it all up. And you can see the size of this hydrogen peroxide bottle. It's 32 ounces. And I put a teaspoon of my rooting powder into the bottle, filled it with water, shook it really well, and that's what I actually watered my soil with before I put the cuttings in. Again, making this really, really benevolent, really, really great environment for the cuttings to grow roots and to not dry out when we get it in the soil, because you want to make sure that your soil is fully hydrated, because if it's not fully hydrated and you have pockets of moisture, that's going to possibly kill your cuttings, because they're in a really fragile state when you put them in anyways. So you're going to do a light hydration till it clumps when it's in your bucket. And then you're going to make sure that they're pre-moistened. They're moistened really well, your pots, before you put your cuttings in. And you don't have to do it this way, but it's just my little trick to actually add the rooting compound into my water. So after I've hydrated all my pots really well, then I go and collect then you want to label your pots. So I've got different types of grapes here. I've got some guavas, lemon guavas, a strawberry guava. I've got giant Russian raspberries, pineapple guava, service berries, what's this one? Actually, that's the service berry. These are the honey berries. This is tea. It's a type of camellia that you make green or black tea from. This is another guava. This is my pink guava, and then more service berries. And some of these are experimental. Some of them I know will root. Like I had success doing this cutting of this little honeyberry, but I was really sloppy with my soil. I used crappy soil and a lot of them died because there was just too much bacteria in the soil and there wasn't good drainage. So I transplanted this recently. It was the only one out of 6 or 8 cuttings that survived. And I transplanted into this better soil so it can really take off. Another thing, when you take your cuttings, you want to kind of look at the cutting you take and cut it at a node point, or where you have a little bulging where leaves may be coming out of it, or tendrils. And that's where you want to do your cutting, because that's usually a good stepping off point for roots. And also when you do your cuttings, they don't have to be this long. I probably went way too long with these. And you want to remove the really mature, the larger mature leaves from the base, because those probably are not going to hold up anyways. They're just going to take energy from your cutting. They're going to die, so you can remove those. But these are the crappiest scissors in the world, so that's not going to get removed right now. So then after I've labeled my containers and I've collected my cuttings, then I cut the cuttings at the node point. I dip them in some rooting powder. I push them down into my soil. And then I make sure that I press down around the cutting to make sure there's a really firm connection between the moist soil and the cutting. And then give it a little more water just to make sure that there's no dry pockets in there that could keep the cutting from making contact with the soil and having the ideal rooting situation. And there you go. That's how you start a cutting. Now, some of these, like I said, it's completely experimental. I don't know if they're actually going to root or if they're just going to die. So now it's just a waiting game to see who will survive. I know that grapes take cuttings very easily. We know this already. I know that guavas can possibly take cuttings. I know for sure that something else here. Oh, I know the honeyberries, because I've done it before, can take cuttings. I'm sure raspberries can, but I've never tried it. But this is kind of a rare raspberry. I actually got these from Ukraine before the war, and it's supposed to be a giant Russian raspberry. So legendarily, they're massive. We'll see. You know how they always make things look so supernatural when they're selling it to you online. But if they are giant, I'm sure they're going to be great raspberries regardless. And the leaves are a little different from the other raspberries and blackberries that I have. So we will see. And I'll give this a week or so, and we'll come back to it. And I'll let you know what was a success and what wasn't. Right now, we're running temperatures in the 70s. But at the end of the week, we're going to finally have a heat wave here going up into the 90s. And at that point, I'll probably have to get a fan out here because it'll get way too warm. But right now, this is an ideal environment for cuttings and everything else we have going on in here. Okay, that's the project going on right now. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the box below, and have a great day. Bye.